Well, welcome again, everyone. And this is the National Referral Network advisor and or every other person insight time. I'm sort of improvising this morning, Mike, because I don't know what my script is. But anyway, this is Professional Insights, and it's brought to you by the National Referral Network and hosted by two, very this morning dim-witted bald guys, at least me. I don't know about you.
It's been a slow start, Mike.
It's been a slow start. We're slow out of the box this morning, but we will get there. But all this is meant to enlighten all that are watching, enlighten, inform, and maybe even inspire. Who knows? But let's jump right into this. We have no guest this morning, but we are going to talk today about Secure 2.0. What is that? That is the next iteration of the Secure Act, the latest version of it, or the updated version of it. We'll talk about all the features therein. And Mike, a lot of changes to this thing. And I think investors, just everyone out there is going to want to know what the new rules are. So let's talk about what the new rules are.
Yeah, and really, Mike, first, Happy New Year, by the way.
Happy New Year.
I think, it is the 10th. It is the new year. A lot of changes are happening within legislation. So today, like Mike said, we're going to talk about Secure Act 2.0, but specifically kind of the 5 top changes that could impact your retirement the most. And honestly, Mike, I've talked to some clients and they didn't even know about the old required minimum distribution. So this is kind of an update to an update, and hopefully you get something out of this.
Well, let's start there, because for those of you who don't know, the Secure Act, the original version of it, was passed in 2021. And probably the most notable change that occurred with that act is regarding required minimum distributions from retirement plans. Now, if you have a retirement plan, the soonest you can take money out without a penalty, because if you're under if you are in your working years, if you're under age 59 and a half, and I do not know why it's 59 and a half and not 60 or 59 and a half, who knows why that's the case. But if you're under 59 and a half, you can't take money out without paying taxes and a 10% penalty. Okay. Mm-hmm. So pretty steep stuff. You get about 60 cents on the dollar, something like that, maybe even less if you're taking money out prematurely. It's a bad idea. If, on the other hand, you leave the money in and you take money out post 59 and a half, all you have to do is pay the income tax on it. Remember, none of the money in the retirement plan has been taxed, so naturally you're going to pay taxes at whatever your current tax rate is. Now, if you haven't taken any money out, well, let me back up. If you don't take any money out, the IRS at some point is going to make you take money out. Okay, they're going to say, hey, you know what? We waited long enough for our tax, so start distributing money out. Now, the age at which you had to do this used to be 70 and a half. Again, 70 and a half, not 71, not 70, 70 and a half. Don't know why that was. I venture to say that most people still think that rule is in effect. However, the Secure Act, the original version of it that was passed in 2021 rather, actually increased that to age 72. So you got to be 72 before you have to take money out. And you're taking money out according to what's called a minimum distribution formula. It's called required minimum distribution. If you don't know how much you would have to take out, if you're somebody who's that point in time is upcoming, then there are all kinds of calculators and so forth where you can plug in your balance and you can look at how much money you need to be taking out, so you can know how much your income is going to increase, because again, you're going to pay taxes on those distributions. However, okay, so they raised it to 72 in 2021. The latest version 2.0 of the Secure Act, actually raises the required minimum distribution age to 73.
They took off the half.
So it went from 70 and a half to 72, and now it's going to 73 as of 2023. So if you're going to turn 72 in 2023 and you think, oh my gosh, I have to take out money from my retirement plan. Well, no, you don't. You can wait another year. Okay. And this is actually going to be graduated up over the next couple of years. I believe in 2025, the age at which you must start taking distributions out is going to be raised to 75. Okay. So interesting changes. Are you finding that people even know about this?
They haven't, Mike, but I think the key thing is what happens when you hit that age and you don't need the money? Do they still, I mean, I understand it's in the name, required minimum distribution, but you get to 73, you're still working, you're still doing your thing, you're healthy, you don't want to quote unquote retire. What do you have to do? Do you have to take that required minimum distribution?
You do have to take the money out whether you need it or not, unfortunately. Okay. Now, as a simple rule of thumb, if you want to know, well, how much money do I have to take out, it's roughly about 3.5% of the balance. So, for example, if you have a retirement plan that has $1 million in it, it's roughly 35,000, maybe 40,000, something like that. Okay. Again, there are all kinds of calculators out there. Just pulling up, just search RMD calculator, plug in your balance, and it goes boom. It'll show you just how much money you're going to need to take out. Yes, you do need to take the money out. And if you don't need the money, you can do all kinds of things. Give the money to your kids. I'm sure they'll really love you for that. If you want to do that,
Can you reinvest it?
You can. Yeah, that's where I was going. So you can reinvest it. What we do with a lot of our clients is we set up what are called brokerage accounts. And a brokerage account is just any old investment account. And what happens is the money comes out, the taxes are paid, and then the money is moved over into the brokerage account. And it really is just kind of a back office thing. So if you don't need the money, that's one thing you can do. Set up a brokerage account. The money comes out, taxes are paid, then the remainder goes into an after-tax account. And just sort of, that can happen year by year. And it's kind of a nice problem to have, I suppose, when you don't need the money. And I think probably sets up maybe some additional dimensions to one's estate plan. Not big dimensions, but eventually, if you do have an estate plan, and everybody should have an estate plan, then these brokerage accounts we would set up probably need to be owned by whatever trust instrument you have, so that everything's compartmentalized correctly. But yes, that's an easy thing. That's an easy thing to address.
So, Mike, in the first Secure Act, and I don't think a lot of clients understand inherited 401ks and how the RMDs affect those accounts. So I know there's a 10-year period. So what happens if I inherited a 401k and all of a sudden now are there requirements that I got to do over the next 10 years? What does that look like?
Well, yes, there are. I mean, what you have to do is you have to pay the taxes over a 10-year period. It used to be that you could stretch those taxes over your lifetime. You can't do it anymore. And this is what happened with the passage of the first Secure Act, again, back in 2021. It eliminated what became known as the stretch provision, meaning that you could stretch the taxes over the course of your lifetime if you inherited really any retirement plan. Now the taxes have to be paid within a 10-year period. So
meaning you have to. So if you had $1 million account, your parents pass, you get that 401k, no matter you need that or not.
You have to pay the taxes on the entire $1 million within 10 years. Okay. So again, brutal. Well, I guess so. It can be. I mean, there were, again, they're just, with every change in tax law, there's always a concession here or there, I suppose. Okay. So and the other thing here with a couple of other points just to go through with this new version of the Secure Act. And we're just kind of hitting the highlights this morning. If you really want to know more about it, reach out to us and we can walk you through some of the finer points. But one of the more notable changes is with regard to 401k participants who, when you enroll for your employer, if is going to automatically be required to enroll you in the 401k, and starting with a 3% contribution. Now you can opt out, but it's not an opt-in anymore; it's an opt-out. Okay, and so what's going on is the government's really trying to encourage people to save and invest, and I suppose that's always been a good thing. People do need to save and invest more. Okay. There is a feature with the new, with the new version, where you can actually, on a pre-tax basis, create emergency savings. Okay, $2,500 a year, big whoop, I suppose, but it's something. Okay, so $2,500 a year. You can actually, now I thought this one was interesting. You can actually pay, if you're paying down student debt and you're making an equal contribution to a retirement plan, then your employer can match that contribution. Okay, so it's meant to encourage those who are paying down student debt to simultaneously be putting money into retirement plans. I don't know how popular that's going to be. Most people are paying down student debt.
Yeah, the challenge is, Mike, is that if I'm taking money out of my payroll to pay down my student debt and my employer matches that payment, that's a taxable event.
Right.
And people don't understand that is a taxable event. So if you, whatever your income is, and you contribute $10,000 and they match that 10,000, that 10,000 is taxable.
Right.
So you have to be aware of that.
Yeah, you have to be aware of what the rules are. Again, there are lots of nuances and lots of new rules. The catch-up contributions for those investors and participants who are older, those limits have been raised. Particularly if you're over age 60, those limits are raised. I think I think what is happening is the government is finally getting behind the idea that people are living longer. Retirement ages are therefore getting raised, and that probably makes sense. People are living longer and working longer. They're staying in the workforce often to age 70 and beyond. I don't think 65 is necessarily old anymore. No. I mean, you're still vital and in the prime of life at 65 for some people. Yeah, at least they would say that. So a lot of these changes are taken into consideration. People are living longer. So there's big changes for catch-up contributions, RMDs. Government will no longer make it a requirement to take minimum distributions out of Roth or employer-sponsored Roth accounts. Now, if you don't know what a Roth is, if you contribute to a retirement plan, it's what's called a deferral. You're taking part of your pay and you're not taking it, you're redirecting it into a retirement account, which means you don't pay taxes on it. Okay. If you do it in an IRA, what you contribute to an IRA is tax deductible. So at the end of the day, you don't pay taxes on what's contributed to retirement plans. When you take the money out, the money is fully taxable. A Roth is sort of the inverse. You put money in, you don't get the tax deferral or the tax deduction. But when you take the money out, it's entirely tax-free. If you are younger and you have that option in your retirement plan, please do consider taking advantage of it. It's a spectacular way to create tax-free income when you're older. And it's really, I don't know about Mike, and maybe you can respond to this, but it's the only thing I know of where the government actually gives you an honest to goodness tax break. It's the only thing I know where the government isn't giving it to you in one hand and taking it back in the other. They're actually giving it to you in one hand and not asking for anything back. Because if you put money into a retirement plan, you're young, let's say, and you put money into a Roth, you don't get the tax deduction. You take the money out tax free. All the earnings during your working years, however long that is, all the earnings are tax free. So you get that again. Only thing I know of where the government gives you something for free.
Yep, and I think that's the big thing with the Secure Act is that it allows for employer matching contributions into that Roth account. Now, please talk to a CPA about this because obviously there could be tax complications or tax not consequences, but there's a taxable event if your employer is giving you money after taxes. But to Mike's point, look, if you have an option to pay taxes now, because you know what the taxes are now versus paying taxes 30, 40 years down the road, I'm not saying they're going to go up to 94% like they were, in the 60s or the 70s, but we certainly aren't going downwards. Mm-hmm. So even if you start a little bit, there's calculators out there as well to show you what that implication is by putting money into a Roth IRA. I think it's one of the most underutilized tools in somebody's financial bailiwick that's out there.
Yeah, again, and if you are really under age 50, in my opinion, and you have that ability to put money into an employer-sponsored Roth, by all means, take advantage of it. Now, the disclaimer is, talk to your tax preparer about how it might impact your tax situation, just so you're aware and just so you don't get surprised. But spectacular option. Now, the last thing I want to mention here about the new Secure Act change is regarding 529 plans. suppose you have a 529 plan and you've been building it up for years, and all of a sudden, let's say your child decides to become a car mechanic or a bricklayer or a carpenter. By the way, we need more of those people.
We do need more.
We need more.
Yes.
I hope more high school graduates are considering going into the workforce in that way. But that's just me. But if for whatever reason that college fund either gets underused or goes unused, there is an option up to $35,000 for that money to be rolled over into a Roth IRA for the sake of the beneficiary. That's kind of a neat thing. Again,
that's kind of a huge thing.
It's kind of a huge thing. Yeah, it is. Yeah. But again, subject to a cap of 35,000, but still not so bad.
I mean, before the money just it didn't go away, but if you could roll it to the next kid, but if you've got 4 kids and the last kid decides not to use it, there's all kinds of tax implications and how to withdraw that money. Now you can roll over 35,000 into a Roth.
Yeah.
I mean, the government doesn't get a lot of things right, but that's a good
that one right.
They got that one right.
That one right. Yeah. We're not. Well, I mean, it's not that the government doesn't eventually get a lot of other stuff right. It just sometimes takes some time, you know.
Yes. Or they bury the good things into like all the minutia stuff.
Yeah, I guess, you know, what's the old saying, you know, that, well, I'll paraphrase: the government can always be counted on to do the right thing after they've tried everything else. Something like that. That's the old Winston Churchill quote. But
you look at an 18-year-old that, you know, decides to be a skilled worker, go to a technical, you know, profession, right, whatever the case is, and all of a sudden he walks into that profession with a $35,000 Roth IRA. Mm-hmm. And oh my goodness, that's a huge benefit.
Well, the net effect over that person's work life is massive.
Massive.
Absolutely massive. Okay. You're literally giving that, if it's your child, you're literally giving your child, I don't know, maybe even as much as a $500,000, $750,000 leg up on retirement, something like that. I think that's how that would play out mathematically.
Yeah, and let's just think about that, Mike, real quick. Is that over the course of his life, he builds that up and on all the averages, right? And let's just say that he grows it to $1 million. He continues to control, or she, either one. They grow that, right? They grow that to $1 million, and you have 2 individuals that have the exact same $1 million. One's taxable, one's not. That's the full $1 million. Like, I don't think people really grasp that concept.
Yeah, right. No, that's true. That's like $1 million with nobody else taking anything.
Yeah. And a great example is Shaq's story. When he got his, we'll call it the first $1 million, he goes and buys a car. Car Vegas. And somebody goes, well, that wasn't a full $1 million. You got to take out the taxes. Right. So one kid has $1 million, the other kid has $1 million, but the effective number is really 750,000.
Right.
That's a big difference.
No, it is a big difference. So it really is important to, you know, be aware of some of these changes. And, you know, as advisors, we're still getting our arms around a lot of the nuances and a lot of the details. But so today we just kind of hit the highlights and giving you the headlines. Again, the big one being, if you're someone who is about ready to start taking distributions, or you think you have to start taking distributions because you're 72 this year, well, then good news. You don't have to.
You got one more year to let that thing cook.
Yeah. Unless you need to. And then of course, you know, take the money out, but you're not required to. And so, anything else that we want to add to this morning, Mike, before we sign off?
No. Appreciate the time, Mike. Next week, we'll have a guest on the line. We got to figure that one out. But look, if you guys find this valuable at any level, please like it, share it, and be here. We're here every Tuesday morning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And we will have additional guests. And by the way, anybody who wants to respond back, if you have any suggestions for things you'd like to see us talk about, I think
that's great.
We'll do that as well.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thanks, y'all.
See you next week.